I'm going to start out with a little story, lighten up a little bit. A man was walking along a California beach, and he was deep in prayer, when all of a sudden, he said aloud, "Lord, grant me one wish." The sky clouded over, and a booming voice said, "Because you have tried to be faithful, I will grant you one wish." The man said, "God, build me a bridge to Hawaii so I can drive over anytime I want to." The Lord answered, "Your request is very materialistic. Think of the logistics of that kind of undertaking. The supports required to reach the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, the concrete and steel it would take. Wow, I can do it, but it's hard for me to justify your desire for worldly things. Take a little more time to think of another wish, a wish you think would honor and glorify me." The man thought for a long time and finally said, "Lord, I wish that I could understand women. I want to know what they feel inside and what they are thinking when they're saying nothing, and how I can make a woman truly happy." After a few minutes, God said, "How many lanes do you want on that highway?" I've told that story before, but I laugh every time I read it. This morning, we're going to talk about discovering our oneness with God. And I'm just going to share a few ideas with you from A Course in Love. I talked to one lady, she said that she had read A Course in Love, and some of you have also studied A Course in Miracles, and sometimes we think that they kind of parallel each other. A Course of Love was received and recorded by Mari Perot. And after several life-altering experiences, Ms. Perot, a devout Catholic living in Minnesota, began hearing voices. And after a period of time, she came to realize the one prominent voice that she heard was that of Jesus. So in the late 1990s, Ms. Perot decided to resign her administrative position at the University of Minnesota. And as the voices continued, she then decided to start recording the messages. And it was after 3 years of being faithful to her internal guidance and collaboration with close friends, she published A Course of Love. Essentially, A Course of Love reminds us that we are one with Source. Some refer to that Source as God and the Christ consciousness. And the reason I use the term remind is that A Course of Love also states that when we're born, when we come into this life's experience, we have all the knowledge that we need to exist. But through our training, our education, our parents and guardians' influences, and just plain life experiences, we forget our divine connection, our oneness. We forget our source. And for your consideration, I'm going to briefly share just 3 basic ideas that A Course of Love reveals. And the first and probably the most important is that we have only 2 emotions. The first one is love, and the second one is fear. And we can control our emotions through our thoughts. Thoughts of love connect to our oneness with God, and we experience love and joy in our lives. Thoughts of fear serve as a blockage to our oneness with God, resulting in undesirable, ill-serving experiences. A Course of Love also emphasizes that love thoughts flow through the heart, from the head to the heart. Fear thoughts flow from the ego mind. And I've discovered another source of the same information. You know, one thing when you see the truth in different sources, you know it's the truth. And the other source that I have noticed lately is Unity magazine has been featuring articles on this very topic. And in the May-June 2019 issue, an article entitled "Attitude is Everything," authored by the doctors Gerald and Diane Jampolsky, included a very powerful description of fear. And many of us make decisions from time to time, some knowingly, some unknowingly, on fear, which is also known by other names, like pain, guilt, judgment, and self-condemnation. Fear disguises itself so that we think it's the only voice in our head that's safe to listen to because it's so familiar, consistent, and most often supported by others. This is what the Jampolsky said. And this point is emphasized, the same point, throughout A Course of Love, by stating that not only do we have these fears, we also develop a system of patterns and habits to accommodate the fear. And when this occurs, we may consider stepping away from the situation, look at it as though you were watching a movie, and ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Fear equates to perceived separation and loss. Separation or loss of something that's very important to us. It could be a job. It could be relationships. It could be health and judgment of our self-esteem. And the list goes on and on. These perceived fears can manifest in life-altering experiences. However, the real cause of the fear is our fear of being separated from God, from our source. The Unity article that I referred to earlier goes on to say that the inner voice of love, our source, wills us to experience happiness and joy and to dwell with inner peace. To escape this fearful experience, A Course of Love offers an exercise which will reverse a shift in our thoughts. And the shift will also help us to replace old habits and patterns with new habits and patterns. And the exercise is very simple. It's 6 words. I dedicate my thought to union. I dedicate my thought to union. I dedicate my thought to union. And when we repeatedly practice this exercise, what we're doing is consciously uniting our thoughts with our heart. We will begin to view the world through a different lens. We will now tap into inner peace, and our thoughts will be clearer and and so much more. The heart center is the love center, which unites us with God, our Christ consciousness, that thing that's bigger than ourselves. And I tell you, this exercise will change your life. The second principle I'll share with you this morning is the importance of loving ourselves first. This will lead to greater and stronger relationships with others. On June 16, I saw a Louise Hay affirmation that said, "The greatest gift I can give myself is unconditional love." The greatest gift I can give myself is unconditional love. We have to be kind to ourselves, not so judgmental. We're really not that bad. Simply because we can't love anybody or anyone else without loving ourselves first. Remember, love emanates from the heart. The heart is the center of our being, which unites us with Source. I can't repeat that enough times. We have to focus in on that. And it's from the inside out that we change our lives. And I recall a Unity minister, he was an interim minister at Zrelder for a period of time, Bob Wasner. And he would always say in his talks, everything emanates from center to circumference. And I didn't know for a long time what that meant. But what goes on in here, you'll find out there. So by doing this, we will improve our self-esteem, we will improve our confidence, and most importantly, we will improve our relationships. Relationships are very important. We don't function well without good relationships. My third and last point is A Course of Love reminds us that through love, we enhance our ability to trust our divine guidance. Our intuitive guidance sharpens. And you might say, you know, Zrelder, when I go inward and I ask for answers to questions, I experience multiple answers. That monkey mind is messing with me. It's confusing. So how do I know which one is the right one? That question is asked often. If you are connected with Christ consciousness, you will know, you will feel in your heart. If you ask rightly and go into the quiet space deep within and call on your God source, call on the Christ consciousness, or as so many of us are practicing now, we're calling on our angels. Angels are all around us, just waiting for us to give them assignments. And they respond. But after they respond, they like to be thanked. We have to say, thank you, angels, because we may have to call on them again. And I'm just going to share an example that I experienced about 3 weeks ago. I found myself in a frustrating situation, and it was so frustrating, I forgot all the stuff about, of course, love. Because I thoroughly enjoy working outside in the yard, in the good weather. However, because of all the rain that we've had, and the weeds have just taken over, everything in my yard was totally out of control. And ordinarily, this wouldn't bother me, because in past years, I just work until the job was done. This year, what I quickly came to know is, life is catching up with me. And I don't have the strength and the energy to do what I've done in the past, especially in the sweltering heat. And I also found that landscapers in the Columbus area are really busy. And it can be a challenge to find a good, reasonable landscaper. And I had contacted two, and the only response I got was, "I'll get back to you." So on this hot, steamy Saturday afternoon, I'm tugging and pulling with weeds while trying also to trim shrubbery, and it just wasn't working. I just couldn't do it. And finally, in desperation, I said out loud in the driveway, "Oh, dear angels, I just can't do this. I need help, and I need it now." A few minutes later, I heard a deep, quiet voice say, "Z?" I was kind of startled because I didn't hear anyone walk up behind me. So I slowly turned to find my neighbor from across the street, smiling. And he stopped working in his yard and came over to offer assistance. And we had a brief conversation, and he said, "You know, if you need to have anything done," he says, "I can do lots of things. I can change washers, and I can fix toilets." He says, "We would be happy to come over and help you. All you have to do is ask." And afterwards, the conversation, I felt so uplifted that I wondered if he had heard me cry out in the driveway. Now I'm embarrassed. And in any event, I felt, but I did feel good. I put everything away in the garage. I went upstairs, I showered, I dressed, and I went out. I said, "Forget this." 2 days later, that would be Monday afternoon, I received a call from the landscaper. This was my first choice landscaper. And he said, "Mrs. Smith, I understand you would like an estimate for some work." And I said, "Oh, yes." He said, "Well, I'm on the next street working on a big job right now. And I can be at your house in 2 minutes. He says, "Now, I got a stack of estimates that I have to do today. They're all over. They're Gahanna, they're Westerville, they're all over." He says, "But I can come over and we can just look at the job." So before I could hang up the phone, he was in the driveway. And he looked at the project. He quoted me a reasonable price. I looked him in the eye and asked, "When can you do the job?" He was startled. I didn't negotiate. I didn't criticize anything. I just said, "When can you come?" And of course he was startled, and he said, "Well, my crew is on the next street. They're about to finish up this job over there, and they'll be done in a couple of hours, and then we can come over." He says, "They work from sunup to sunset, and if you don't mind, we don't mind." I said, "Bring him over." So, sure enough, he was there in a couple of hours, and I looked out. I couldn't believe what I saw. There were 8 to 10 men. There were 2 trucks. They had all kinds of equipment, and they even had the mulch on the trucks. So, as he had indicated, they could get it done. That was like 4:30. By 7:30, the work was done. They did an outstanding job. And when I paid the landscaper, I told him, "You know, I was praying for somebody to come and do this job." He took the check and he gave me a curious look and went on his way. And the next day, I still needed to have some shrubbery, privacy shrubbery trim. My son-in-law came to Columbus. He was traveling from Atlanta to Cleveland, and he stopped in Columbus with my daughter and their kids. And he did that. It's beautiful. I didn't have to do a thing. but write a check. That's when it works. When we can balance our head with our heart, we can create wonderful experiences out in our universe. And again, that meditation is, I dedicate meditative exercise, that's what it is. I dedicate my thoughts to unity. And I tell you, it will work if you work it. That was the words of another now deceased Unity minister, Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. It works if you work it. So with that, I would just ask you to become quiet and let's close with a prayer. Father, Mother God, and divine angels, we give thanks for the opportunity to come together to celebrate relationships and share ideas about loving goodness. We pray that through your grace, you will make our pathway smooth, and as we go about our weekly activities. And for this knowing and experiencing, we give thanks in the name and through the power of Jesus the Christ. Amen.